Hey everybody, welcome to Board Game Heaven. My name is Raymond, and in this video I'll be taking a look at Reichbusters Projekt VRIL by Mythic Games, who were kind enough to send me a copy to review. This is a game for 1 to 4 players, which plays in the Weird War II setting. You're a team of crack commandos trying to infiltrate German bases, trying to get all kinds of missions done, and the Germans have been experimenting with a compound called VRIL, and they have all kinds of freakish experiments walking around which you need to take out, and you cooperatively try to finish all of those missions. Now, I'll explain roughly how to play the game. There's a lot of rules to take in, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. To set up a game of Reichbusters, first of all, take the mission book and check the mission you want to play. For example, this is mission 2, has the map set up right here. So you take that and you set up the map accordingly, starting with the tiles. Next, you take all of the tokens and all the door tokens and everything that's depicted on the map and just place them on top of the boards. So here's an example of a fully set up map with all the tiles and all the tokens. If you see a room that has one of these cards, that means you take all of those cards. There are all kinds of different ones. They have different text on them. You shuffle that deck and then you randomly take one of those and place them in the indicated room as is indicated in the mission book. And after you've done that, you also need to make sure that all your doors have the right numbers. There's level 1, 2, and 3 doors, and they require a different number of white dice to roll, which I will explain in the rules. And if you have the 3D doors, there are also level 3, 2, and 1 3D doors that you could get and use, and they open as well, which is pretty cool. It gives the whole game a more 3D look, so you can do that as well. All of these kinds of tokens are pickups. Your heroes can pick those up, and they all have a number and a different icon on the back. And you simply take all of those icons and you randomly draw a number of those tokens that are indicated on the map and place them in the indicated room. So you always will have different drops that you can pick up. These are the heroism tokens. They come in 3 different kinds. You have this burst, this shield, and a wild token, which can be used for anything. And you just take all of those tokens and you shuffle those and you randomly make a stack near the board. Should you play the campaign and your heroes have already gained some of those heroism tokens in a previous mission and you still have some left, then those are placed on your Reichbusters headquarters card for your team to use. Take the mission card for this mission as indicated in the mission book. Also says mission 2 on here, and it will show you all the different monsters or enemies that will spawn, and you just keep that near the board as well, near the table. And of all of these spawn tokens, we've got level 1 and level 3. In this map, there's also a level 2 spawn token, but you really only need to keep the remaining level 1 spawn tokens near the map. The rest can be returned to the box. Check the mission book for the alarm track. In this case, we have 4 steps of pre-alarm phase and 4 steps in the post-alarm phase. Place the indicator token on number 1 over there and just keep that near the board. Keep the rest of the tokens nearby as well. Shuffle the pre and post alarm cards and form 2 stacks. Just keep that nearby. Also shuffle the spawn cards and the wound cards. Keep those nearby as well. Keep all the dice nearby and just place them on the table. And then every player chooses their own character. You can play this game with up to 4 players because there's always 4 heroes in the game. If you're playing with less players, you could play with 3 heroes, but that's more difficult. And otherwise with 2 players, every player takes 2 heroes. And if you're playing solo, you just play 4 heroes. So you take one of these player dashboards, you take your hero's card, which has a little bit of a bio on the back and all of their skills on the front. It also shows you which tokens you need. So you got a couple of weapons and a feature here that you can put there. And these tokens are skills that are explained in the rulebook, and every character starts out with one, and you can have up to 4 of those skills, but more on that later. And you've got 2 weapons, and they are double-sided as well, so make sure to put the right side up at the start of the game. Then you also have a deck of cards, so you take all of those cards, you take out the 2 Hero's Feet cards, which are these cards, the first 2 cards of the deck, which only have 1 square with text on them. All the other cards will have 2 squares on them. And you give those a shuffle, and then you draw 2 more cards from this deck, so your starting hand will be these 4 cards. Do the same for the other heroes that you chose, and also take their corresponding decks and take their feet cards, shuffle the rest and draw 2 more cards. And lastly, take the corresponding hero miniatures and place them on the indicated starting tile. In this case, it's the entrance over here. Just place all the heroes there, and you're ready to start the game. Now you can set up the game as a one-off game, or as I said, for a campaign mission, and you can also set it up for a raid, which is explained on page 4 of the rulebook, which tells you which cards and which items you need for a raid mission. And here it also tells you for a campaign mission, the 6 missions in the core game will have certain things that you might need to swap out, some cards or tokens, to set up that campaign mission appropriately. And also when playing a campaign, you can choose how hard you want to make it by setting a difficulty for things that happen in between missions. Then read the appropriate mission's objective and possible special rules. And once every player knows what they should do to complete this mission, you're ready to play. So let's explain the rules. Now the game is played in turns, of course, so you have this player reference which you can give to each player, and it explains what you can do in a hero turn. So you can take 2 actions, and there are also action cards that you can play, and there are a couple of free bonus actions as well. Such as dropping an item, using an item, giving or taking an item to or from another hero, or perform a VRIL enhancement. More on that later. So you can move once per turn, attack once per turn. You can search, ready equipment, draw 2 cards, unlock or open a door, and recover. If you're put down, if your miniature is on the floor, then you have to recover. After each hero has taken their turn, then the enemies take their turn, and that is a fixed set of rules here, which I will also explain. And after all the heroes have taken their turn and the enemies have taken a turn after each hero, then there is a end of round phase, which I also will explain in a bit. And on the back of the card, you'll have all of these icons explained from the dice, which you use to perform certain tests. All the effects that can happen on your hero cards, they will have all of these icons, and this explains what they mean. And there are some tokens that apply to weapons, so you can have a jammed weapon, for example. There's a weapons range, wound tokens as well, and items that drop. All right, so we have those reference cards. Now in the pre-alarm phase, every player can decide in which order they want their heroes to take turns. So you can just decide who goes first, and after you've taken a turn, you've got these dog tag tokens with numbers on them. Everybody can take one, and after say the first player here has taken a turn, they just take a token and flip that over, indicating that they've taken their turn. Now in the alarm phase, once the alarm goes off, there's the post-alarm phase. You take these tokens with these numbers 1 through 4, and you just give them a shuffle, and you randomly put them on the table like so, and then the tokens determine the turn order. So for example, if you flip these over, so that means player 1 takes the first turn, then player 3, then 4, and then 2. So that would mean that after the alarm, every round, it's the first player, then the third, then the fourth, and then the second, which continues for the rest of the game like that. All right, so I will go through the rules. I will try to be brief because there's a lot of rules. It's about 10 pages of rules. So I'm not going to explain every detail. I might skip over some things, so forgive me for that. Otherwise, this video would be too long. But let's talk about the basic actions. So first of all, heroes can move. And moving simply means moving from one tile to another, or from one zone on a tile, which is indicated by these dotted lines, to another as well. They can only take one basic move action per turn, but you may use action cards to move more than once during their turn. So for example, Claudine here has a card here that says, so move one and then draw one card. So this token here means it's a free action. You just play the card and that's it. That's a free action. Then afterwards you discard the card. That's what that icon means. And you have to roll one noise die. The white dice are noise dice. And then you can just move Claudine an extra movement, one spot, one zone, and then you draw a new card into your hand. And you choose either the top or the bottom one. So if I do this, I can't do the thing on the bottom, and then I discard that card. Heroes cannot in the same action move into and then out of an area that contain one or more enemy units. That is a actual figure, a miniature of an enemy. But they can move out of one area with enemy units into another area that also has enemy units. You can, however, move out of an enemy occupied zone in a separate action. So you can't just simply move in and then out, but if you take two separate movement actions, you can do this. A movement action can also be used to lift up a hero who has been knocked down. So if one of the players were knocked down and another player were to use their move action to help them up, then they would simply put that character upright again. Now the second action they can choose to do is attacking. And again, you can only do one basic attack action on your turn, but again, you can use cards that let you attack a second time to do more attacks on your turn. So for example, if there was an enemy unit present in this room as well, and Quentin here wants to attack that enemy, then Quentin can use a basic attack to do that. So he checks his weapons over here. So he's got a bow which has a range of 3 and the precise knife that has a range of 0. So in this case they're in the same zone. This entire tile is one zone. So that means he can use the knife, and that requires him to roll 2 black dice, which are the attack dice, and 0 white dice because it's quiet, he's very stealthy. So then you simply take 2 of these black dice and you roll them. And every time you roll one of these bursts, that's a hit. If you roll a blank, that's of course not a hit, that's nothing. And you can also roll 2 bursts or 3 bursts. And if you roll a star, that means 2 successes. So this counts for 2. And you have to spend this result basically on one of the following effects. Either you can trigger an effect of a skill, an item or a weapon, etc. And each special can only be applied once per action. And you can only spend a special if it can actually be applied. Or you receive a boost, which means you roll an additional die of the same type. So in this case, I could roll this. This still counts as 2, but I can spend basically the effect and roll an extra die. And in this case, I get another hit. So if I rolled another one of these, then the same applies. Basically, they're exploding dice. So let's say I rolled this. So that means that's 3, 4, plus 2. That's 6 successes. Now that is a soldier, so you simply check the mission card, which has all of these units on it. And the soldier here has a defense of 4. So that means if I had rolled 4 successes or more, I hit. And now normally a regular unit only has 1 hit point. So as soon as you actually wound them, they are removed from the map. Now some units will have extra wounds. So for example, over here, experiment 601 says here it has 2 wounds. So if you wound it in that case, you take one of those wound tokens and you take one of those experiment, I guess it was this one, for example. So then it would take a hit and then you place a wound token next to it. And then as soon as it receives 2 wounds, in this case, it is also defeated and removed from the map. Now on the back of the mission book is a very handy reference card that explains all of that, how that works. They also have a ranged and a close combat value here. That's the amount of damage they do. And they have support value as well. All of that is explained in the rulebook. Now you have these colors, and that means if they are gray, then they will drop normal loot, which are these loot tokens. They can also drop VRIL loot, which are indicated with this red VRIL container, so to keep those tokens nearby as well. And the black ones do not drop any loot. In this case, it's the dog and the VRIL Panzer in this example. So they don't drop any loot. Now these enemy units also have their own reference cards that tell you more about that unit and explain these keywords that are on it. So that's very handy as a reference as well. Also tells you in which campaign missions they are used. So, and they tell you what they drop. So this is the icon of the token they drop. So whenever you kill one of these, you take one of those tokens and drop it where they were killed. So that's pretty straightforward. Here is a soldier as well and a scientist. So the scientist, for example, drops different type of loot. Then there is also some of these cards will have these tokens. If this token is on the card, that means if you wound it, they become more dangerous. You basically change their stats. So you flip over this card to its red side. So in the front it's a gray one, then it's a red one. And if this one is again damaged, you continue to the second card over here on the gray side. And if that doesn't have any icons anymore, then after wounding it, you kill it because there's nothing on the back. But this could technically also have an icon and then a red number 2 on the back if it's a really, really dangerous kind of enemy. Now, if a unit is in the same area, then that is considered melee range, and you can only perform melee attacks when in the same area. So you can't use ranged attacks. So Quentin could only use his knife and couldn't use the bow. So they'd have to be in a different spot. So this door is open, for example. Had that officer been over there, then Quentin could have used his bow and shot that officer from a distance. Now, anytime a weapon shows one of these white die icons with a number on it, you roll that many white dice to see if you made any noise, and this will have these noise icons on it. So you make 1 noise or 2 or 3 or even a critical, which is again 2 points worth of noise in this case, and you have to roll another die, but there's also blanks on these dice. And I'll explain more about how noise works later. And like I said, the doors also have these numbers 1, 2, and 3. So they require you to roll noise dice when you try to open them. Now, that's basically in a nutshell attacking. Third action heroes can use is the search action. So let's say there was a enemy here that we took down and they dropped this loot. Now anytime a hero is in an area with a face down item and there are no enemy units present, then they may perform that search action. You always perform a noise test as is indicated on that token, though the rules say that you always perform a test with 2 dice when picking up one of those tokens, and that the numbers on these tokens are not used in the core game. I found that a bit confusing. To be honest, I just generally like to just roll the number indicated on those tokens, which makes more sense to me. But according to the rules, you just roll 2 dice, you perform that noise test, and then you flip all the tokens that are in that area. So for example, if there were more of these here, you just flip them all over to see what they are. Then the player chooses one of those face-up items and places it on their hero's dashboard, and the rest is left face up. So then next time when another hero performs a search test to pick up one of those, they don't need to be flipped over anymore, and you don't make any noise. There's a 0 on this side as well to indicate that. So for example, if Quentin wanted to pick up the keys, for example, he could take that token and put it in one of these 4 slots. A fourth action heroes can choose from is to ready equipment. Now that removes any of these black or red tokens from their dashboard or from an adjacent portal. Portals are only featured in the Not of This Earth expansion. And removing this red side also requires the hero to have and discard a VRIL orb item on their inventory, because this is the red side. There are VRIL enhanced weapons, and this action doesn't cause any noise, so you don't have to roll any white dice. A fifth action you can take is to simply draw 2 cards. So you can just draw 2 cards from your face down deck and place those in your hand. And there's no limit of the number of cards that you can have in your hand, and of course it also doesn't require you to roll any noise dice. The sixth action you can take is to unlock or open a door. So let's say Quentin's over here next to this door. Now if a door is locked like this, indicated with the locked token, then the first time you use that action, then you unlock it and you simply remove that token from the door. But if there is no locked token on it, you can actually open the door. Now, in order to do any of those actions, you roll the number of dice indicated on that door. So in this case, to unlock it, you roll 3 dice, and then to open it, you roll 3 dice as well. In this case, you only have to open it, and you roll 2 of these noise dice. So again, you roll the noise dice. That's 2 noise in this case. Again, I'll explain what that does in a bit. And if you do that, you successfully open the door, and you flip over the token to the open side. Once opened, a door cannot be closed. And finally, the seventh action, like I said, is to recover. So sometimes a hero sustains so many wounds that they can't continue without tending to their injuries. You get wound cards as well, which I will also explain in a bit. And when a hero who has 4 or more permanent wound cards, then they are downed, and you put them down like that. And then if you're downed at the start of your turn, you must spend both of your basic actions to recover. So basically that's all you can do with your basic actions, and then your turn is over, unless you can of course use some cards and free actions to do something else on that turn. And when you do recover, you discard all of your wound cards except 2 of your own choice, and you can stand your miniature up again, and then you can continue playing action cards as normal. Now, downed hero can also be healed by an allied hero during another player's turn, for example by using an item token or an action card. And if a downed hero finds himself with fewer than 4 permanent wounds during another player's turn, you can also stand them back up again. So if for some reason one of those wound cards is removed, you're no longer downed. Alright, so let's talk about noise then for a second. So anytime you have to do a noise test indicated by these white dice, either on doors or tokens or on cards that also have this, or weapons, then you roll that number of dice and you check the result. And again, if you roll a burst, then that's 2, and you have to roll another die. So in this case, I would have rolled 3 noise. Then you draw a card, in this case from the pre-alarm noise cards. If you're already in the alarm phase, you draw one from the red cards over here. And then you look at that card and you do what it says. So here in this case, the first thing you always do, and that in this case is re-roll 1 blank. So if I rolled a blank here, I have to re-roll that. If I don't have any blanks, I don't need to re-roll anything. And I roll another burst. So that's another 2. So I have to take another die and roll that as well. So now there's a second blank. I don't have to re-roll that. So now I have a total of 5. So I check my card again. Now this is a number 4. If you roll that number or higher, you also have to do the secondary effect. And that says an enemy patrol appears. It is at ease. And it tells you that it's 2 of these green first level enemy patrol tokens. So when that happens, you simply, you can discard this card afterwards, and you take 2 of those tokens with that same number 1 printed on it, and you put those down in that room. No, excuse me, well, in this case, they do enter this room, but they always enter through the nearest closed door. So in this case, of course, this door would have been open because the heroes entered here. The nearest closed door, if this one was already open and this one as well, then they would enter through this door. So you place those tokens here. It's still in the same room. This is considered one zone. And this door is opened by that patrol and remains open. Now, if there are no doors left to open, then a patrol appears from the nearest barracks, which are these red tokens here. There's an A, B, and C in this scenario. Always spawns from the nearest one. So if this was already open, then these tokens would be placed here. They come from this barracks token. And if the area in which the patrol appears is in a hero's line of sight, which in this case is the case, then the enemy units immediately spawn. So that means you remove those tokens and take the appropriate miniatures. And I'll explain how to decide which miniatures belong to a token in a second. But lastly, a thing to remember here is that, so in this case, these spawn here, is that a token cannot spawn, cannot enter a room from a zone that has been cleared before. So the backside of these tokens has the cleared symbol here, which is gray with the red icon there. So that means if you've already been in a room, so let's say the heroes have already been in this corridor and they cleared it of enemies, and then they can put this token here, indicating that no more new enemies can spawn from that spot. So if this door was still closed and this door was still closed, well, it can be because they already cleared it, but yeah. And in any case, if that was the case, then enemies cannot spawn from that room. Now, however, if an enemy unit enters a room or corridor with one of those tokens from another room, then this token is removed because they basically repopulate the area. All right, so how does an enemy patrol spawn? So placing miniatures on the tiles. Now, they can be spawned as a result of a noise test, like happened, or by a spawn token. It can also happen directly. So what you do, if you can trace a line of sight from your hero to the spawn token, in this case, obviously, because they're in the same room, sometimes you have to be in a straight line like that. I'll explain line of sight in a second as well. There's a lot of rules here. So what you do is you check the color of the spawn token. Then you draw a spawn card, and the spawn card will have these three colors on it. So in this case, the green token spawns a letter B and a letter D. And in this case, the orange one would be 3 C's and the red one would be 2 E's. So we need a B and a D to spawn. You discard that card. So I can actually just put it in here. So then you again check your mission card for those numbers. So we needed a B and a D. So over here that says a soldier and a dog. So you take a soldier miniature and a dog miniature and you place them on the map for the first token that we flipped over. So then you remove that token from the map and you take a soldier and a dog token like so, and then you do the same for the second one. So again, draw a spawn card, check the card. This time it's an A and a B. Discard that, take this off the map. And in this case, an A and a B means a officer and a soldier. So I take, let's see, an officer miniature and another soldier miniature from the pool, and I place them on the tile as well. Now, tokens also spawn enemies whenever the room that that token is in is alert. So that means that these tokens, normally they are at ease, there's no tokens. This means that the room that those tokens are in is suspicious, and once it's flipped to the alert side, then that room is on alert and all of those tokens spawn miniatures. More on that later. And lastly, all the tokens are also spawned when the alarm is raised. So once you reach the end of the post-alarm phase and the alarm is raised, then all the miniatures spawn. Now, after the alarm has been set off and you're in the post-alarm phase, those spawning rules change slightly. Now, rather than appearing in the form of patrols, enemy units spawn in the areas on the map that contain barracks A, B, or C. And the barracks where each unit appears is shown on the post-alarm noise card. So again, if you have to draw a noise card, now it's the red ones, then here it will tell you what happens. So in this case, this card says discard 2 cards or add 2 noise to your total. And if your total is 10, then here it says the nearest exit, in this case, spawns a J. This uses the exit, so there's also cards like this which have the barracks on them. So this has barracks A, B, and C. You pick the nearest one and it also spawns a J unit. And then once again you check your mission card here and it says the J in this case is a tracking bomber. All right, so it gets increasingly difficult. So let's get back to that awareness level for a second here, and I'll explain what that is. So now, if a room or a corridor with an awareness token contains no more enemies, so no more spawn tokens or actual enemy units, then whenever, whether as the result of an attack by a hero or the movement of an enemy unit, then you can remove those awareness tokens. Now, awareness increases, there's, like I said, 3 levels, and it increases whenever an enemy unit first sees a hero, regardless of the circumstances, and you only increase the awareness level of a particular room or corridor once per hero turn. So from at ease to suspicious, or from suspicious to alert. It also happens when 1 or more heroes are in line of sight of 1 or more enemy units present in that room or corridor at the end of the enemy turn, and only again increase the awareness level once per room per turn. Or if an enemy unit enters a room or corridor with a different awareness level. If an enemy with a higher awareness enters a room with a lower awareness, then that room is also set to the higher of the 2. But once the alarm has been raised, you can stop recording the awareness levels because all the enemies will spawn and they are all alert. So that is basically the most important rules. There are still some basic rules that I need to explain, so I'll do that now. So first, let's talk about how the tiles and everything work. So tiles are basically all of these boards, and they function as one area unless they are divided by these dotted lines like this or that. And sometimes they have an actual wall printed on them, like this black line over there. And every area requires 1 point of movement to move into. So this is one area, moving here is one movement, moving here is one movement, etc. Now, whenever you have to decide which is the nearest, so for example, when spawning these patrols, which is the nearest closed door, you simply count the number of areas between where that specific hero is and the doors that you can open, whatever you need to check. So in this case, this is a room, this is 1 area, 2 area, 3, 4, etc. So that's how you count. And areas are considered to be adjacent if they share an edge that is not blocked by a wall or a closed door. And a door is adjacent to an area if it is part of the wall that it borders. Now, some rooms have these room feature cards like we showed in the setup, and whenever a hero has line of sight of one of those, they are flipped over and you can read what is found in that room or area. And line of sight itself is pretty simple. Heroes can see in the 4 cardinal directions, and they can see as far as there are open doors. So the only things that block line of sight are obviously walls and closed doors. An allied hero can trace a line of sight through other allied heroes, but not through enemy units. So actual units that are on the board, not tokens. You can see past those. An enemy unit can also trace line of sight through other enemy units, but not through allied heroes. So it works the same both ways. And like I said, spawn tokens are not units, but basically representations indicating that 1 or more enemy units are present in that area, and they do not block line of sight. So let's get back to the turn overview here. So we've discussed all of the hero's basic actions and a lot of the things that can happen during a hero's turn. Now, when a hero has taken its 2 basic actions and maybe some free actions as well from cards or whatnot, then you play an enemy turn. So what happens now? First of all, it says here, you raise the alarm. Now, in the pre-alarm phase, when you're still pre-alarmed, the alarm hasn't gone off, then if any enemy units are alert, then you advance the round marker by 1 on the pre-alarm track. Now, enemy units are, like I said, only alert if they see you, like here. So these enemy units would actually be alert. So this room is alert here. So then you advance the round tracker. If you're still exploring and no enemies are actually alert, so for example, this is, most rooms are at ease because there's no token, and these are suspicious, then the alarm is not raised. So it's very important to stay stealthy for as long as you can. And then post-alarm, once that tracker hits the alarm and you're in the post-alarm phase, then enemy units skip this phase because the alarm is already raised. The second thing you do is action stations. All alert enemy units on the map move, and do this in the order shown on the mission's faction card. In the post-alarm game, all enemy units are alert. So alert enemies move, that means you check the faction card here and you start with the officers, then the soldiers, zombies, etc. that are present, and they will move towards the nearest hero. Then they will try to attack. So your third step here is kill the intruders. All alert enemy units that can attack will do so. And you have them attack again in the order shown on the mission's faction card. And finally, you check awareness. So check whether any heroes have enemy units in their line of sight. And then, like I said before, the awareness is raised appropriately. There's one exception to the movement of enemies on the enemy turn, and that is the guard token there. So if there are any enemies, on patrol here with the guard token, they will not move from that spot. Unless there are 5 units in that area or more, at which point enemies will move out until they're back to 4. So then when enemies start attacking the heroes, they will attack a hero that is either not captured or downed. And if 2 heroes are equidistant, the enemy will attack the hero who most recently had a turn this round. So the player that just finished their turn gets attacked first. And if none of the potential target heroes have taken their turn this round, then the players choose who the enemy units attack. And if more than one enemy unit of the same type attacks the same hero in the same way, melee or ranged, then you can combine all of their attacks in a single defense test. So let's say we have to determine the order. So there's an officer there. So the officer on this card will attack first. Now they have a ranged and a melee attack. They are in melee range, so they will use their melee attack, which is 2. And it also has a +2 here. Now there's only 1 officer here and 2 soldiers. So in this case, when the officer attacks, it only attacks with a value of 2. The soldiers, however, there's 2 units, same unit, so that one gets a support +2. So the soldiers will together attack for a value of 5. So what Quentin needs to do now is to check his defense. So his defense is in the top right over here, which means 2 green dice. Those are the defense dice. So he simply takes those 2 dice and he rolls them. And for the officer, he has to get 2 successes. So look at that. He rolls 3 plus a burst even. And that means he already passes that test of 2. So he doesn't take any wounds. He basically dodges the attack. Then like the card says, the soldiers will attack. In this case, there's 2 soldiers here. So they attack with a combined value of 5. So again, Quentin takes his dice, rolls them. Oh, rolls very badly. So he does not pass that test. Now, when that happens, you don't pass the test, you get wounded. And that means you take a wound card from the wound card stack. That's these cards. And you flip it over. Now it tells you you're knocked back. And then there is also a number here. Now what you need to do then is, if you remember this enemy attack with a 3 + 2, so that was 5 damage. minus 1 defense equals 4. Then you check this number. Now this is a 7. So if my damage was more than this, I only took 4 damage, but if I had 7 or more, then I would take this wound card, add it to my character, and this tells me to flip one of this hero skill tokens to its deactivated side. Its effects no longer apply, and flip it back when this wound is removed. So that means my skill token here, Stealthy, is flipped over and there's a cross through it, so it's no longer active. So in this case, Quentin was lucky, because this is a high number. I'm only knocked back, so that means he's knocked back into another room, like here, for example. Now, if this door was closed, then he wouldn't be knocked back, but he would be knocked back to another room, so I could be knocked back here instead. And like I said before, if at any time a hero has 4 of those permanent wounds on his hero dashboard or just below them, then they are knocked down. You have to put that hero on its side, and it has to spend its 2 basic actions to get back up, or another hero has to assist them. And once a hero is knocked down, so let's say that happened with Quentin over there, then enemies will no longer target that hero, but rather another hero that is in line of sight. However, a hero may still sustain more than 4 wounds as the result of effects that do not target them directly, such as a grenade explosion. Okay, so then after all the hero of the enemies have attacked, so in this case there's also a dog that would still attack. And then after that, you have the end of round phase. Now, when all players have had their turn with an enemy turn after each hero turn, there is the end of round phase, and several effects are managed. So first, all players with fewer than 5 action cards, you can draw 1 action card, take it to your hand. Then you check whether any tokens need to be removed from the map. You advance the round marker by 1 round. And if this marker reaches the end of the pre-alarm section of the mission tracker, then the alarm is triggered. And if it reaches the end of the post-alarm section of the mission tracker, then the mission is a failure. And then you collect the turn order tokens, these dog tags, and you are ready for next round, except of course in the post-alarm phase, you just, the turn order is fixed. Last few things that I haven't mentioned yet is the VRIL dice here. Some items or some weapons will require you to roll the red dice because they are VRIL powered weapons or items. And then you roll these dice and they have a number of successes as well, as you can see, as well as blanks. The burst here as well, the critical hit or whatever you want to call it. And they also have a surge side. Now each critical effect may be spent to cancel the effect of a single surge, and each remaining surge causes a catastrophic backfire. So the hero must then immediately draw a wound card and apply its permanent effect only. So VRIL items are powerful but very, very dangerous. You have a 1 in 6 chance of getting a permanent wound. And that is also when you get one of these red jammed weapon tokens. Now then there's also these heroism points, which I haven't explained yet. Now you may collect a random token from these stacks whenever you pacify a room, which I will explain in a bit, or when you rescue a captured hero. And heroism points are represented basically by these tokens. And they come in 3 types, like I showed. You have the attack with the burst. Let's see what that was here. The attack with the burst, the shield, and the wild card, if I can find, there it is. So what that does is you simply spend those tokens, and you can spend them in 2 ways. You either before a test spend 1 heroism point to automatically succeed, or after a test you can spend 2 heroism points to convert a failed test to a success. Now attack and defense obviously can only be used in attack and defense tests respectively. The wild one can be resolved for anything, but they can never be spent on noise tests. So what is pacifying a room or corridor? This happens when there have been at least 4 enemy units in that room or corridor, and all the enemy units in that room must have been killed in a single turn by the hero without spending any already gathered heroism points. So when you do that, you have done something very heroic, and you get to draw one of those tokens. Now, I also mentioned that heroes can be captured, and that happens if they are isolated and overwhelmed by enemy units. And so at the start of your turn, there have to be 3 conditions, and if they apply, you're captured. So first of all, the hero is downed. Secondly, there are no other heroes in their area, and then there have to be 4 or more enemy units in that area. Now, enemy units will not attack a captured hero, and a captured hero cannot perform any actions during their turn. Their enemy turn is still performed after that hero's turn, even though they can't do anything. And it basically behaves like a guard point, just like that over there. So the enemy units in that same area, at least 4, will stay there. Now, a captured hero can be rescued by the teammate, so if the 3 conditions no longer apply at the start of any of that hero's subsequent turns, then they have escaped and may take their turn as normal. And like I said, once per round, a single hero may collect one of those heroism points as the result of their attack if the area containing the captured hero contains fewer than 4 enemy units. Now, whenever a hero runs out of cards in their draw deck, you simply shuffle all the discarded cards and create a new draw pile. And that also goes for the noise, the enemy, and the wound cards. But in the case of the hero action cards, whenever you have to shuffle all of the discarded cards to create a new deck, you remove the top card from the game, so your deck gets smaller and smaller. So that's it. I think I've covered most or all of the rules, not maybe in the most detail, but general overview. The back of the rule book also has another iconography sheet, and all of these tokens are explained here. So there's a nice reference page that you can keep nearby. And those are all the rules on how to play Reichbusters. It's quite a bit to take in. So let's go to my final thoughts. So my final thoughts on Reichbusters by Mythic Games. Now, there's a lot to say about this game, and I will once again try to keep it short. I know my reviews are often lengthy, but I will try to stick to the main things I want to talk about, because there's a lot going on in this game. Let me start, as always, with the components. Well, the components are off the chart. They are really, really good. I mean, these minis are super. That is, of course, the main eye catcher here. The miniatures, they're just really, really well made. They're big and chunky. They are very detailed. If you want to see more of that, check out my unboxing. Just click the eye icon in the corner of this video. That will take you there. I've unboxed everything Reichbusters, and it's absolutely amazing. So right off the bat, there's that. The cards are good quality. They're printed well. The font is sometimes a little bit small, so it's not always easy to read, but I mean, it's big enough for me, but if you have bad eyes and you need reading glasses, you might have a little bit of trouble with that. The cardboard tokens and components are of a very nice thickness. They're about 2.5 millimeters, maybe 3 millimeters thick, so that's pretty chunky. The dice are nice. You get plenty of dice. They are rounded. They are the regular medium size. They have their engraved icons on them, which are also colored in. So they are very clear to make out. I like that. And rounded dice roll well, and you're rolling a lot of dice in this game. So that's fun as well. I also really like the red translucent dice. Really pretty. So all of that is great. You can also get the 3D doors. They're not in the core game. You get door tokens with 1, 2, or 3 on them. But there's also a 3D pack that has doors that actually open, which is pretty cool and also looks really nice on the table. The tiles are of a very nice thickness, same as these tiles here. All have the same thickness. Even the tokens have the same thickness. And that's all very well done. And the artwork Secondly, is also really good. The tiles look really nice. It's a bit dark and moody. You feel like you're in this complex. It's colorful, but still a bit, you know, a bit gloomy. And all the tiles are double-sided, so you have different sites that you're at, depending on the mission. So that's fun as well. I also really like that they have these character dashboards, and you can put your character card, which has a little bit of a bio on it, and your skills and everything. You can put that on here, and then you have all of these slots for items, and you can just easily just flip them out by pressing on one side. There's an indentation there, so they fit in here, and you have your weapons and your skills there. So that is pretty nicely done as well. So I really like that. That's just well made. And yeah, you have plenty of cards. I use one of these trays. You don't get that with the game, but I would suggest using that because you have your alarm cards, your wound cards, your spawn cards, and that is just handy to have that in some kind of card tray. I like that you get these player reference cards. So they have like your hero turn with your actions on them, what happens on the enemy's turn, and the end of round phase. And they also tell you which page in the rulebook you can find that if you need to read a bit more on that, if something is confusing. And then on the other side, it tells you all the icons from the dice when you need to do tests, effect icons and tokens, and what all of that means. So that's well done too, and it's clearly printed, so you can easily make that out. And yeah, so otherwise the art looks really nice, really cool character artwork as well on the cards, and otherwise, you know, they're very clear to make out with all the iconography. So all of that is really, really, really well done, I would say. The theme, I think, is also pretty cool. I like the weird War II kind of setting. I like playing World War II games. I like them on the PC. I like playing Commandos, which is a PC game. And I really like the theme of this as well. It just really draws me in. And the art for it, again, ties in really nicely to that. I mean, just look at all these weird and awesome looking minis and these kind of mutated soldiers that they experimented on. It's just really, really nicely done. So all of that definitely gets a big 2 thumbs up from me. Now, most importantly is, of course, the gameplay. Now, here is where I have several things to say, and I, again, will try and keep that short. So the game, the core rules of the game are manageable. It's not a very difficult game. It's not a complex game in its core. But there are a lot of rules. So you really need to take your time to learn all the rules, and preferably to, you know, teach them to your co-players as well, and make sure that they understand everything as well, because there's a lot going on. Now again, this reference card will tell you how a turn works, so that really, really helps. And it's not too difficult. You can move. You basically have 2 actions. You can move, you can attack both once per turn. You can search, you can ready equipment, you can draw 2 cards, because that's something I like, and we'll get to that. You can try to unlock a door, and you can recover if you're downed. So those are your 7 basic actions. You pick 2, and then after you've taken your turn, it's the enemy's turn. They can raise the alarm. They have action stations. They will attack you, try to kill you, and check awareness at the end of that phase. That to me is a little bit more fiddly, but since it's explained here pretty well, it's doable. And then there's an end of round phase, kind of like an upkeep phase. So that does help. And once you get into that, the flow of the game is okay. It's not too slow, but there is a little bit of downtime, because every time one of the player takes their turn, you've got this deck of cards, right? And you draw a number of cards. And at the end of your turn, you also draw a card. And if I remember correctly, And there's also an action that lets you draw 2 cards. So the way you play the game is that, like I explained, you play a card from your hand that has an action on it, and most of these cards have 2 things you can choose from. And that works really well. I like that system. I like games where you have a deck of cards for your character and you're choosing cards to play and you perform those actions. And that is just very simple, intuitive. You just do what it says and that's it. And then there's, some cards are in there twice, and there's things, you want to attack enemies, or you can attack multiple enemies, or you can make an extra movement. That is a lot of fun. And that works really well, in my opinion. And there's the extra things on your dashboard that you can do. It explains how your weapons work. Basically, all these weapon tiles also have these icons on them that tell you what to do. So when you attack, you roll a number of dice, and the black dice are your attack dice, basically, with all these faces on them. And then you roll the white dice to see how much noise you made. And then you draw a noise card, and it's one of these alarm cards, and it will tell you, if you rolled below a certain threshold, then something happens up here, but if you rolled higher, then something bad happens. And that might not be good. So I like that system as well. Also spawning enemies, once one of these spawn tokens spawns, you look at the mission card and you see what that does. You basically, you draw a spawn card. That's it. You draw a spawn card first, and then it'll tell you, hey, green icon, that's a letter A and a letter B. And on the mission card, it will say what that is, if that's a soldier or an officer or a dog or whatever. And of course, the orange ones are tougher, and then the red ones are the toughest. They spawn more enemies. Also, very simple. Just look at the token, draw a spawn card, look at the color of that token, check the mission card, and that's what you get. And you put those minis on the board. Very simple, very intuitive. So far, so good. Now, aside from those core rules, which again are very manageable, when you're taking your turn, there is a bit of downtime because you need to decide which cards to play, which actions to take. And the first couple of games, that might be a bit slow. Because you don't know exactly what is a good thing to do. And you want to use your turn optimally because, there's pressure, there's the alarm track. So every time you have these alarm, and they have different sides as well. So here it's just 4, 5, 6, or 7 turns before the alarm goes off. And you have this round tracker to keep track of that. And then when the alarm goes off, you have a couple of turns. So here is 3 turns, 4, 5, or 6, until you actually lose the game. But every time when the alarm's off, things are getting heated. Things are more difficult. All the enemies are alert, and they will attack you. And it's try to finish that mission as fast as possible, or you'll die trying. So that puts the pressure on. So you really want to make the best use of your turn. That could lead to a little bit of analysis paralysis. Not too much, because you only have that number of cards and that number of actions, that many actions to take, and you can only do 2. So it's not too difficult, but your first couple of games, you might have a little bit of trouble deciding what to do, or you might just try and see where it takes you, and you might lose and then try it again. And all of that is fine. But there are also quite a few rules that are a little bit fiddly. There's just a lot of rules, and you need to know them all, otherwise you'll be playing it wrong. So you really need to understand everything that's in the rule book. And there are some things, for example, I can't name them all, it would take too long, but there's the awareness level. So when there's, like a spawn token, they are usually at ease, unless stated otherwise in the mission. But once you open a door, and you flip that token over, or you actually physically open your 3D door, and you have line of sight of those tokens, then the tokens will spawn. So you draw a card, you spawn the minis, put the minis down, and then those minis will still be at ease, but at the end of your hero's turn, they will have line of sight of you as well, and they will be suspicious. There's basically 3 triggers that will tell you when a alert token is flipped. So first they're at ease, then you put down a suspicious token, and then that can be flipped to on alert. And once they're on alert, they will attack you during the enemy turn as well. That whole system I found a bit fiddly. It took me a while to really get it, and still, if I haven't played this for a while, then I will have to look it up again, because it's just a little bit fiddly in my opinion. And there's a couple of rules in this game that I feel about that way. So that kind of slows the game down. So you'll be looking up rules in the rule book. Now it's a good rule book, and this is actually a revised rule book that we got, and it has an index and it has icons on it, and it's relatively quick to find what you're looking for. So that's not really the problem. It's just the fact that you need to look it up that kind of slows down the game. So long story short, you really need to be a person who likes the game enough, of course, to really dig into the rules, to really understand them all and remember them all, and preferably the same for your group as well, to be able to play this smoothly and quickly and have a lot of fun with it. Because there is a lot of fun to be had with this game, don't get me wrong. I love this game, it's awesome, and I like the combat, I like the noise system, I like defense with these green defense dice, I like that you can upgrade your character with all these tokens, you can find items, you can pick them up, and all the things you do make noise, and you might raise the alarm, and with the cards, all of that I really like, but there's just a little bit too much going on for my taste to make it, like smooth and fluent. Yeah, for me personally, I'm not the kind of person who you can remember all of that. So I do need to look up rules, because I don't play this daily. I go to a game night with friends, or I invite friends over and we choose a game to play, and that's what we play. So we likely will not be playing through an entire campaign of this front to back every time we meet up. And you kind of need to do that. You kind of need to have a group that will say, okay, look, we're going to play Reichbusters. We're going to play through all the 6 missions in the core game. Every week we'll play one mission, or if we fail, we'll play it again perhaps, or we'll try different heroes. And that's great. And then after a couple of games, you'll grasp the game well enough that it will play more smoothly and more quickly. But if you're not that kind of person, then it's going to be difficult. So there's that. And it's absolutely something that you need to take into account. So aside from that, like I said, there are a couple of rules that I found a bit fiddly and I found a bit hard to understand at first. And those are the rules that you'll forget quickly as well. You're like, damn it, I looked it up last time. I forgot how it works. I'll have to look it up again. And that's just something that kind of makes the game a bit hard to play. Now, the game itself is very challenging. The missions are challenging, and you'll likely lose some missions, certainly the first time you play them. And I don't mind that. I don't mind replaying a mission. I don't mind learning from my mistakes. I like that. The game itself, the missions don't have to be easy, but the rules do. I feel that the rule set should be so easy to understand that you can just play the game without consulting the rule book. And to be honest, I haven't played a single game without either having to ask someone a question or having to look it up myself. And that just brings down the experience for me a little bit. Replayability is very good. I think even though there's only 6 missions in the core game, you'll be playing those for a while, because like I said, you'll fail some missions, you'll want to replay them. You can play them with different heroes, a company 4 different heroes, you can mix and match, and that makes for a different game every time as well, different strategies, different tactics, and I like that. So that's good. You can find different items that will change the game. You can have different weapons. So there's plenty of variability while playing this game. Then there is, of course, expansions that you can get. There is Not of This Earth, which also has 4 new missions. There's raid missions in the core game. There's 3 in Not of This Earth, 4. Not of This Earth has 3. So you have that as well. There is Projekt X, which is basically one huge miniature and one big mission, I would say. And so the Projekt X expansion might not be worth it unless you really want to have it all. But the Not of This Earth is a cool add-on to have. I do feel that if you weren't a backer of the Kickstarter and you didn't get the box over there, the cargo hold, then, I mean, it's mostly cosmetic, but you do get a lot of extra heroes. And I do feel that that adds to the gameplay. So it's kind of a bummer that that's a Kickstarter exclusive as far as I know, because you kind of want to have more characters to choose from. That does add to the gameplay and to the, the replayability of the game. But as it is, I do think that the core game and a couple of expansions do add enough to the game to have plenty of replayability. And besides that, the website, the Mythic Games website, does have additional scenarios, even additional campaigns that you can download and play. And I'm sure there will be more in the future, and maybe even fan-made scenarios. I mean, this is modular. The game's modular, so you can play whatever you want. You can make your own missions. So replayability is really not an issue. There is, however, language dependency. There is a lot of text on all the cards. The monster cards, the enemy cards have text on them. The mission itself, of course, has text that you need to read. Your character cards will have text on them. Your base character card with all the attributes that you have, the skills that you have, that's text. So you definitely need to have a good grasp of, in this case, the English language. There is also a French version of the game, but it's very, very much language dependent. So that is also something you need to keep in mind. And I think that covers it all. So do I like the game? Yes, I do. I really like it a lot. But there are some things that make it difficult and that slow the game down. And there's a bit of fiddliness. I mean, there's a lot of tokens as well. One thing I do want to mention is that this game, like many of these miniature games, come in a box that have these cardboard boxes with these plastic trays in it, which are great for storing all of your minis because they are, nicely safe inside, and they don't take up that much space either. But on top of those mini boxes, they have these sheets of cardboard that you have to punch. And after you've punched everything, you'll have so many tokens, you won't be able to fit it back into the box. And I have issues with that. So what I did now is I put all the miniatures in their original cardboard boxes in the boxes that they came in, but I spread out all the tokens over those boxes. And I used my Projekt X box, which is basically the one huge mini and several tokens and cards. And I just threw out the insert, put the miniature in there, just separate, which left me a lot of room to put all of these bags. I've got bags for all of these extra skill tokens that you can put on your player board. I've got bags for all the alertness tokens, for extra room tokens, for locks that you put on the doors, for the 2D doors if you don't use the 3D doors. I put the 3D doors in there as well. There is just so many tiles and tokens. I mean, it's a lot. There's these cards as well with features that you can find in a room. And there's the patrol tokens, that spawn enemies. The doors, like I said, there's just so many tokens, you won't be able to fit it back into the box. So you have to kind of rearrange the boxes to fit everything yourself. And yeah, I just wish there was a good insert that you could use for this. Now, hopefully there is a company out there that will make a good insert for this, so you can just take out trays with the tokens in them, put them on the table, and that's it, because the setup and the breakdown of this game is rather long. So that is also something I need to mention. But other than that, I did enjoy the game. I wish I had a couple of friends who would really want to play through the entire game and were better at remembering the rules than I am, because that would make it a lot easier to play it. But as it is, it does get to the table, but a little bit more difficultly for our group. So that's it. That's my opinion on Reichbusters. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And if you hit the bell icon, you'll also get notified whenever I upload a new video. Please also consider becoming a Patreon saint to my channel by clicking the link to my Patreon page in the links below. That will take you to my page. You can support me for as little as just $1 a month, which will greatly help to help me make more content. And you'll also get your name in the credits of all of my videos, as well as access to some Patreon exclusive videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Board Game Heaven.